It's a chilling scene, one that has repeated itself throughout history. A crime is committed, something shocking and violent, and before the dust even settles, the crowds descend. Not just a few curious onlookers, but a swarm of humanity, drawn to the spectacle like moths to a flame. This isn't about solving the crime or paying respects. This is about something darker, something more primal. This is the story of how the public, in their morbid curiosity, can become a second wave of chaos, turning a tragedy into a sideshow. Imagine the scene. A quiet street, a secluded field. Now the epicenter of a horrific event. Law enforcement arrives, tape goes up, but it's no match for the sheer force of the public. They push forward, a tidal wave of bodies, overwhelming the few officers trying to maintain order. They trample through evidence, their footprints erasing the killer's tracks. They peer into windows, straining for a glimpse of the macabre tableau inside. The desire to see, to be a part of the event, overrides all sense of decorum or respect for the dead. It's a phenomenon that has plagued investigators for centuries, a human impulse that can be as destructive as it is baffling. In the aftermath of some of history's most infamous crimes, this chaotic scene was all too common. Long before forensic science was understood by the public, crime scenes were treated like macabre tourist attractions. And the tourists weren't content just to look. They were souvenir hunters. They would sneak past overwhelmed deputies and snip off pieces of the victim's clothing. A swatch of fabric from a blood-stained dress, a button from a coat. Even locks of hair were taken as grisly. People would pocket shell casings, splinters of wood from a broken door, or even soil from the ground where a victim lay. These weren't ghouls in the dead of night. These were ordinary townspeople, neighbors and strangers, all wanting a tangible piece of the tragedy to take home with them. It was a bizarre, almost ritualistic behavior, turning a site of profound suffering into a marketplace of morbid keepsakes. The reasons behind this are complex. For some, it was about proximity to fame or infamy. Owning a piece of the crime scene was like owning a piece of history. However gruesome, for others, it might have been a way to process the incomprehensible, to hold something real from an event that felt like a nightmare. But whatever the motivation, the impact was devastating for the investigation. Evidence was not just contaminated, it was stolen. The chain of custody was shattered before it could even be established. Every piece of fabric, every strand of hair taken by a souvenir hunter was a potential clue lost forever. A lead that could never be followed. The actions of the crowd, driven by a collective and morbid curiosity, actively helped the perpetrator escape justice. It's a sobering thought. In their rush to witness the aftermath, they were inadvertently cleaning the scene for the killer. And right alongside the souvenir hunters were the reporters in the golden age of yellow journalism. And even today, the press could be just as disruptive. A major crime was a major story, and that meant a race to get the scoop. No matter the cost, reporters and photographers would arrive, sometimes seemingly moments after the crime itself. weren't just observing from a distance. They were known to bribe officers for information, sneak into cordoned-off areas for a better photo, and interview witnesses before the police even had a chance to. Their hunger for a headline often outweighed their respect for the integrity of the investigation. This created a frantic, almost circus-like atmosphere. You had Lawmen trying to piece together a puzzle while fending off a dozen reporters shouting questions. You had photographers with their big, bulky flash cameras, their flashes popping and illuminating the scene, forever capturing the grim details for the morning paper. These early crime scene photos weren't just for police files. They were for public consumption. And the more graphic, the better. The press wasn't just reporting on the crime. They were shaping the public's perception of it, often sensationalizing details and turning the victims and suspects into characters in a dramatic serial. This frenzied media presence put immense pressure on law enforcement, who were now battling a war on two fronts, one against the criminal and another against the relentless machine of the news cycle. For the Lawmen on the ground, it was an absolute nightmare. Imagine being a small-town sheriff or a handful of deputies, suddenly faced with a crime that would shock the nation. You're already dealing with the emotional and logistical weight of a brutal murder. Now, add hundreds of citizens trampling your crime scene, picking it apart for souvenirs. Add a dozen aggressive reporters shoving microphones in your face, demanding answers you don't have yet. It was complete and utter pandemonium. The primary goal of securing the scene and preserving evidence became nearly impossible. Officers would be literally pushing people back, only to have them surge forward again from another direction. Their authorities are absolute in day-to-day life, seemed to evaporate in the face of the mob's collective will. They were vastly outnumbered and ill-equipped to handle crowd control on this scale. They had to make impossible choices. Or do you try to hold back the 10 people pushing against the flimsy rope you've strung up? It was a losing battle. Important details were lost in the noise and confusion. Witnesses who might have had crucial information were either mobbed by the press or simply lost in the crowd. Their potential testimony swallowed by the chaos. The first 48 hours of an investigation are critical, but in these cases, those crucial hours were spent not hunting a killer, but wrangling a crowd. And then, the images began to spread. The photographs taken by the press, the sensationalized stories printed in newspapers from coast to coast, took this local tragedy and broadcast it to the entire nation. The crime was no longer confined to a single town. It became national news, a topic of conversation in parlors and barbershops across America. These images, often graphic and unfiltered, brought their horror directly into people's homes. They showed the chaos, the crowds, the overwhelmed officers, and sometimes even the victims themselves. This nationwide exposure turned the case into a public obsession. Suddenly, everyone had a theory. Everyone was an armchair detective. Letters would pour into the local police department from all over the country, offering tips and solutions to the crime. While some were well-intentioned, most were distracted, burying the legitimate leads under an avalanche of speculation and amateur sleuthing. The case became a spectacle, a form of public entertainment. The victims were reduced to plot points, and the killer, if still at large, was elevated to the status of a folk villain, a phantom figure that captured the nation's imagination. This immense public pressure and media scrutiny could force law enforcement into making hasty decisions, sometimes leading to wrongful accusations or missed opportunities as they tried to satisfy the public's demand for a swift resolution. The story had taken on a life of its own, and the search for truth was often lost in the noise. It's a powerful reminder that when a crime becomes a spectacle, justice can become the first casualty. Thanks for watching, and if you found this interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history.